The Topeka City Council meeting will please come to order. If you would rise and give your attention to Councilman Manspeaker for the invocation, and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Given the start of Passover this evening and the violence and loss that happened in the last weekend in Overland Park, I would just like everybody to take a moment of silence to reflect upon sort of a hopefulness and a new beginning as spring is starting here in Kansas. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have two proclamations this evening. The first one is for Law Day, and we have Amanda Keither, the president of the Topeka Bar Association. You can step over closer here to me, and I will read. Whereas Law Day 2014 celebrates and promotes the ideal of government of the people, by the people, and for the people, and whereas as we approach the 50th anniversaries of the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965, we are reminded that the right to vote is the very foundation of governance by the people. And whereas this year's Law Day theme, American Democracy and the Rule of Law, Why Every Vote Matters, calls on every American to reflect on the importance of a citizen's right to vote and the important role that voting plays in our democratic form of government. And whereas the rule of law established in the United States by our democratic form of government bestows upon us certain economic advantages, setting our country apart from the rest of the world, and whereas Law Day has been an annual observance since President Eisenhower established it in 1958 as a day of national dedication to the principle of government under law, and now therefore I, Larry Wolgast, Mayor of the City of Topeka, do hereby proclaim May 1, 2014 as Law Day and call upon the people of the city of Topeka to acknowledge the importance of our court and judicial systems. Amanda, if you want to make some remarks, introduce this person.
Thank you. On behalf of the Topeka Bar Association, I am thrilled to accept this proclamation, which establishes May 1st, 2014 as Law Day, and requests that the citizens of Topeka acknowledge the importance of our courts and its judicial systems. Law Day is an opportunity to remind ourselves of the importance of the principle of government under law, especially this year, the 50th anniversary of the Civil Rights Act of 1964. The National Law Day theme is Why Every Vote Matters. The right to vote is the very foundation of this democratic country. I need to thank the TBA Law Day Chair, Vince Cox, an attorney with Kavanaugh and Lemon, and a board member of the TBA, who has led the TBA's efforts to celebrate Law Day. Those efforts include a coloring contest for elementary-aged children. I also need to thank the members of the TBA Young Lawyers Division, which annually sponsors the Law Day 5K Run and Walk. The Law Day 5K is scheduled for April 26th at 8 a.m. It begins at the law school, and the proceeds benefit the Kansas Legal Services. More information and to sign up for that can be found at our website, topekabar.org. Finally, I must thank the TBA sponsors and members for their continued support of the TBA's Law Day initiative. This proclamation will be shared with the TBA membership on May 2nd at our regular meeting. We are so appreciative to you, Mayor Wolgast, and to each member of the City Council for this recognition of such an important day. Thank you. Thank you very much.
And I invite up Jennifer Grossman of the Kansas Children's Service League and the Shawnee County Alliance for Drug Endangered Children. And this pertains to April is Child Abuse Prevention Month. And come right over here and we will read this. Whereas the month of April is Child Abuse Prevention Month, and drug-endangered children are at a higher risk for abuse and neglect, and whereas it is estimated that more than 62,000 Kansas children live in homes where alcohol or other drugs are abused, and it is estimated that 4,500 Kansas infants are born prenatally exposed to substance every year, and whereas children whose parents or caregivers use drugs are at a higher risk to use drugs themselves, and whereas all expectant parents need to receive information about the effects that drugs and other substances have on their unborn babies and on their judgment and parenting abilities, and whereas those in need of treatment who are either pregnant or already have children have a right to treatment options that support their role as a parent and take into consideration their children's needs in the process. And whereas the statewide Kansas Alliance for Drug-Endangered Children, along with the Shawnee County Alliance for Drug-Endangered Children, invite all residents of the city of Topeka to participate in Drug-Endangered Children Awareness Day. And therefore, now I, Larry Wolgast, Mayor of the city, do hereby proclaim the day of August 23rd, 2014 as Drug-Endangered Children Awareness Day. Thank you. It is great to have you here to help recognize the significance of this. If you want to say some words. And you have some people
Yes.
that we want to
I'll
have
introduce
stand.
them.
All right.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you to the Topeka City Council members for supporting local efforts to identify and protect Shawnee County children living in drug-endangered environments. I'd like to introduce some of the core members of the Kansas Drug-Endangered Children Alliance in Shawnee County, if they would stand. Katie Hodge, Sarah Hortenstein, Michaela Fisher, Rochelle Preston, Elizabeth Cobb, Christy Kane, and her son Jordan, Regina Franklin, Elizabeth Cobb, and Danielle Renier. Drug-exposed children impact our community in a number of ways, from the negative impact of medical, emotional, and educational problems these children face, as well as the increased incidence of abuse and neglect in homes where substances are abused. The Shawnee County Alliance works to raise awareness of the problem, as well as programs to help families receive help with substance abuse and parenting. As part of Drug Endangered Children Awareness Day this year, a 5K race will be held on April 19th at Hummer Sports Park. 5Ks are popular. To raise awareness and funds for additional training for professionals in the community. Thank you again for your support.
Thank you, and this is an important process. Thank you all for coming here this evening.
Thank you.
That completes the proclamations. Now we move to presentations. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Today is really the official beginning of the 2015 budget process, and we're kicking it off. This is going to be a very brief presentation. What we wanted to do was to provide you some of the organizational priorities that we're going to recommend, and then talk about the nature of the budget discussion, the strategies that are being employed, and the assumptions that were made. But I think more importantly, we want to outline the schedule, the process, so that people can plan accordingly and understand where it is that we as an organization want to go. I will say the most important thing is we're focused on a structurally balanced budget. We want to take a long-term look, really understand the decisions that we make today, how they impact us as an organization for the next 5 years, and help us achieve our goals of being a sustainable and fiscally sound community. But I think most important, we want this to be an engaging process. We want to provide opportunities for the citizens of this community to participate in the process and to have their voices heard. We want to be able to respond to those voices in such a way that we truly create a budget that is based on our commitment to customer service and meeting the needs of this community. So at this point, I'd like to introduce Nikki Lee, who will do the 2015 budget priority kickoff.
Thank you. Welcome, Nikki.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. This is kind of a follow-up to what you saw previously this evening in the work session. And really, the whole point of this presentation is to follow up on our financial picture and talk to you a little bit more about where we're going specifically with the upcoming budget process. So this is something we'd like to get into annually, is really have a kickoff, whether it be in March or April, with you all, to let everybody know that now's the time we're starting to talk about the budget process, get the calendar out there, start to get the citizens engaged. So this is really a formality to really get everything started. Sorry. Maybe you could just click ahead on the computer there.
Maybe not.
Thanks. Sorry. What did I do? Oh,
I did it.
I was hitting. Oh, okay. Okay. I'm sorry.
Right.
Sorry, I thought I was doing that. All right, so tonight the first thing we wanted to bring to you is our organizational priorities, because the way that we look at the budget is we want to make sure everything we're doing in that fiscal year really speaks to our organizational priorities. So our organizational priorities as they're laid out here are, we really have a commitment to customer service, which the city manager already spoke to, fiscal health and sustainable growth, organizational excellence, safe and secure community, stewardships of the city's physical assets, and thriving livable neighborhoods. So everything that we're doing with every budget process every year should be underneath the framework of all of these organizational priorities. Thank you. So then every year, we're always having those same organizational priorities, but we want to present you all with some specific budget strategies for that specific year. So we're always working under those same framework, but we've got some strategies that have to speak to that particular year. So for 2014, we've put together some strategies that we'd like to present to you all as things that we're keeping in mind as we're bringing forward the proposed budget. First and foremost is building the general fund balance. As we spoke to you a little bit earlier, this is really not only our 2015 goal, but our long-term plan going out into 2019. Next, we're going to be focusing on customer service. So everything that we do in the budget is going to be focusing on, we're going to be thinking about how is this going to impact our citizens and how we provide all of the services to everybody. Next, we want to be investing in infrastructure, so maintaining what we have, especially our physical assets. And then finally, maintaining the current mill levy. So as we're going into 15, we do have some budget assumptions. We talked a little bit about this this evening, but just to hit up on a few of the major assumptions, we always want to be looking at not only our revenues, but also some of our expenditures. First of all, overall, we're projecting some modest growth in our revenue, and one of our biggest revenue that we touched on is the assessed valuation. So this is your property taxes. We're assuming a little bit of growth there. We're also assuming a 1% growth in sales tax, which we believe is pretty conservative, but this is something that we don't want to overshoot. We don't want to go too high in sales tax and not meet our projections. However, we are seeing some growth in Topeka, so we're very comfortable with the 1%. And then on the expenditure side, overall, we're working on a budget that's assuming a 2.5% personal services increase. So this is wages, benefits, all of our categories that are tied to personal services. And then all other expenditure categories, which would be your contractual services, your commodities, everything else, basically except for the people, we're going to be bringing you a budget that's either flat or decreasing. So finally, most importantly, we wanted to bring you the tentative budget calendar. So we have worked on this calendar. The deputy mayor, the city manager, and I have worked through this calendar. And we're going to be posting it to our website pretty much after tonight. Tonight's really kicking everything off. We'll post it on our website. That way all of our citizens can see the way that we're going. So really, you start off with tonight, which is the kickoff, as we said. Once we get to the month of May is pretty much going to be dedicated to the capital improvement plan. You all in the fall received some presentations from finance and the city manager about changing the way we're doing our CIP. The way it was done in the past is really in the fall. You all looked at the CIP for that coming year, and then come January, for example, January 14, you were approving projects to start in 2014. We really want to get ahead of that so that we can start planning on projects. Obviously, it takes several years to get major infrastructure projects going. So what we're wanting to do is every spring bring forward the next year's CIP process. So what you're going to be seeing in May are projects for 2015 through 2019. And you'll also be approving project budgets for 3 years rather than a 2-year. So at the first meeting in May, on May 6th, we'll really bring forward a presentation that lines out what our plan is and tells you a little bit more about the details and how this process is going to change. Once we get to the end of May, so this is the week after Memorial Day, we're going to have some public engagement events, and we'll be putting a lot of information out there, promoting it on our website, Facebook, all of that. Really what that's going to be is a Tuesday and a Wednesday, and we're going to try to have opportunities available for everybody, a morning opportunity and a couple of evenings. And those meetings will really be half kind of informative. We really want to tell citizens a lot of the information we gave you tonight, a little bit about where the city is going in general with our expenditures and our revenues. And then, of course, give them a chance to follow up with some feedback. And then following each of those meetings, there will be a budget committee meeting. So for all of the council members that are able to attend, afterwards they'll have the opportunity to have a committee meeting and react right away to what citizens said during that meeting. And then following that, on June 3rd, we're going to be bringing forward the results of those meetings. So basically, we'll condense all the comments, all the questions we got, and come to you with a brief presentation outlining overall, here's what we heard from the citizens, here's what we're implementing into the budget. We're planning on sending you the proposed budget around the first week of June, and then we'll kick off the rest of our budget committee meetings in mid-June. On the calendar here, you can see we have a Saturday, a Monday, and a fourth Tuesday. Those are the plans at this point to be really addressing all of the different budget issues. And that is all with the goal of finalizing the budget by mid-July this year. So that concludes my presentation. I'll take questions or comments.
Are there questions, comments? Mrs. Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question for you, sweetheart. I have a question for the city manager. So if I look at this, and this is meeting number 1, how do I know where the fire, where public safety is going to fit in?
Mayor, Councilmember Ortiz, we will provide all of that information. We'll identify specifically what the plan is when we bring the trial budget forward to you at the beginning of the process where you're looking at it after those initial meetings, but you'll see it prior to the discussion meetings.
Do you know when that will be?
That will be,
Because if I look at this, and you're saying this is my calendar,
on 6/14, you'll see that. You'll see it a little bit before that, but we're going to factor in all of the information that we collect prior to then, and that information will be provided to you prior to 6/14, I believe. June 14th.
okay, because that only gives us about a month to to retain all that and then vote on it, according to your calendar. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I'd like more time than that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Mr. Campos?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd second that, Mr. City Manager. We need time to go to our constituents, go to our NIAs, our HOAs, and speak with them and get their input. I wouldn't want to crunch this down. You had mentioned setting time aside for vacation. I don't have any intent on taking a vacation personally, but of course, I'll take the direction my other colleagues take. But I like the structure that we set up last year, and I think it was rather fine. Pushing it up all the way into May and June, it just seems to boggle the system down just a little. But I understand where you're trying to go with it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. I have a question on you listed here the budget priorities, organizational priorities. How were those determined? Has the council, and typically the council provides some input on the priorities, and then we have the budget strategies. Is there going to be a time, for the council to provide any input on what the goals and strategies are for our city?
You want to answer that?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Mr. Mayor, thank you. What we're providing tonight in terms of those organizational goals and the priorities, those are our recommendations coming forward.
Oh, so these are not,
Yes.
it just says the budget priorities.
Correct. I'm sorry, in the beginning of my comments, I mentioned that those were recommendations, but I
Okay.
agree, it was not clear.
All right, I think we should make that very clear,
Exactly.
so that, the council, as developing the policy, would be able to provide input on what the priorities are for our city. Okay, are there other questions or comments? I'm sorry, Ms. Hiller.
Oh, no, that's fine. I just raised my hand. Along with the questions of my colleagues, then, I do see in the calendar that we are talking about 3 sessions on May 27th and 2 on May 28th for public engagement, so a chance for citizen input. Kind of following up on Councilwoman Ortiz's comments, then, will there be some sort of document that you or we will prepare that the public will be commenting to or about? Or what was your vision of how those 3 would go, if I may?
Mr. Mayor and Councilmember Hiller, yes, what we're going to do is we're going to present at those meetings what the issues are, the challenges are, the questions that we have as a body in terms of addressing this year's budget challenges, and allow people to provide input to you, which goes to Mr. Compos's comments. We want to gain information from people as to what they think about the issues that you are going to discuss and to provide direction on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments? Okay. Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
That completes the presentation, and thank you very much. That completes the presentations. We will proceed with the roll call.
Mayor Wolgast,
Here.
Ms. Compa, I'm sorry, Ms. Hiller,
Here.
Mr. Campos,
I'm present.
Ms. Ortiz,
Here.
Ms. Everhart. Here. Ms. De La Isla,
Here.
Mr. Manspeaker,
Here.
Ms. Schwartz, Mr. Schmidt,
Here.
Mr. Harmon.
Thank you. I want to comment briefly first related to Councilwoman Schwartz's absence this evening. And as you know, that Councilman Manspeaker spoke to, on behalf of the city of Topeka and the governing body, I offered our sympathy and support to the city of Overland Park, which is really practically a sister city of ours. I've become very well acquainted with Mayor Gerlach in my last year and have communicated with him in dealing how a city deals with a tragedy of this sort. And of course, it's particularly significant as a hate crime against a particular element of our society. Passover, which is the most holy of the Jewish holidays, started at sunset on Monday, and Monday evening the families typically gather together. And then on tonight, the second night, they have temple seder. And this is really a Jewish holiday today. So we want to recognize it in that manner. First, Councilwoman Schwartz had thought she would be here tonight, but because of the tragic situation in Overland Park, she decided that she thought she would prefer to be with the temple at their service this evening. So we certainly want to acknowledge that, acknowledge her absence, and be cognizant of the situations in communities. In a sense, our area of the country has not really suffered these types of situations, but as most people have said, or we all think, not in our place, but probably it's only a matter of time until it happens every place. So we certainly want to be aware of the situation, Overland Park, 50 miles away, and what that city is going through. Thank you. And with that, the consent agenda, and City Clerk, I believe we have some additions.
Yes, Councilmember Hiller would like to request to add 2 resolutions. One granting Downtown Topeka Incorporated and the Celtic Fox an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 et seq. Concerning noise prohibitions, and another resolution approving a special event known as the First Friday Concert Series.
Okay, and for time-wise, they should be a part of the consent agenda.
I think he has, doesn't the
They can be a part of the consent agenda if there was no, if Ms. Hiller, if you'd like to move to add those 2 resolutions to the consent agenda.
Can I add them together, or do I need to do them one at a time?
Yes.
I believe the mayor has a vote on the alcohol provision, so those would go on new business.
Okay, both of them.
Yes.
All right. Would you please, then we will have a motion that we place them on new business.
I would move to place the resolutions which I will call number 1 and number 2, the ones regarding DTI and the Celtic Fox, as well as the resolution regarding the First Friday concert series, to this evening's agenda, recommending that they be under new business item 6.
Okay, item C, 6C. Is there a second? Mr. Isla seconds. Discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the 2 resolutions will be added at that point. We proceed then to the consent agenda, if the clerk would read.
A is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Michelle De La Isla granting Boss Hogs an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. B is a resolution introduced by Councilmember Michelle De La Isla granting Boss Hogs an exception to the provisions of City of Topeka Code Section 945-150 at seat concerning noise prohibitions. C is minutes of the regular meeting of April 8th, 2014, and there is a list of open after midnight applications before you.
Okay, council members, you have heard the consent agenda. What is your pleasure? Mr. Schmidt?
Move to approve.
Mr. Schmidt moves to approve. Ms. Isla seconds. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes, opposed vote no.
We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, the consent agenda is approved. Proceed to unfinished business ordinance, IPMC.
A is an ordinance introduced by City Manager Jim Colson concerning the adoption of the 2012 International Property Maintenance Code, repealing in their entireties Section 635-060, 860-180 through 860-220, and Chapters 865, 870, and 875 of the Topeka Municipal Code, as well as amending Sections 225-250, 860-010 through 860-170, 880-040, 880-050, 1435-050, and 1470-150, and specifically repealing said original sections. Final reading.
Mr. City Manager.
Mr. Mayor, as we introduce this item, I just want to very quickly state that I want to thank you for your leadership on this. This has been a very long road. Prior to you even becoming mayor, you identified this and public safety as critical issues, and you challenged us to pick up the ball and run with it. And I want to just thank everybody for the tremendous amount of effort that was put forth. Mr. Sublette and Darren Scott, Captain Scott, work on this, but also Mark Galbraith and John Moyer and hundreds of people involved in various meetings on this. Our plan tonight is to be very brief in our presentation. We know that there's a lot of people that want to speak, so at this point, I will turn it over to Mr. Sublette.
Mr. Sublette.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Again, I'm going to be brief. We've had 3 work sessions on this issue. We've had several meetings with different stakeholders in the community. The adoption of the International Property Maintenance Code would bring us in line with several other cities throughout Kansas who have adopted the International Property Maintenance Code, which is created by a group of professionals looking at these different issues. So we've gone through this several times, and I just would hope that we would take this up this evening.
All right, now, and council members, if you have a brief presentation, we can typically have a motion to approve, and then we can go into either amendments and at that point, then we would have our public comment. Mr. Manspeaker?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve the ordinance, the 2012 International Property Maintenance Code. I understand there are amendments that we would consider at this point.
I'm
Yeah,
not a
Mr.
member of
Sublette?
this body, so cannot make amendments, but there are 3 very small issues that I think I would ask for a motion. The first one is on line 432.
Okay, just a second. Let's make sure we have this in front of us, which it is the handout 5A.
Yes,
We'll
Mr. Mayor.
make sure we have that in front of us, and we're together with you. Okay. Now, if you want to start again?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Page 19, line 432, would just change the term building official to code official.
Okay, let's just take a minute. That's at the line at the bottom of the page.
Yep, the last word at the bottom of the page, line 432, at the very end of the sentence.
All right. Yes, Mrs. Everhart.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It looks like that's kind of just a cleanup amendment because we don't call them building officials, we call them code officials.
Yes, Deputy Mayor?
So I would move to adopt the amendment.
Moved and seconded to adopt that amendment. Any discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Those opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the amendment is approved. Okay, Mr. Sublet?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On page 20, line 434, when we talk about the value of the structure, insert the word replacement value.
Now, yeah, state that.
Sorry, page 20,
Page 20,
line 434.
434, a second line from the
Yeah.
top.
It's the third word in on the second line. It's just inserting replacement value
Okay.
to clarify what we mean by value.
Yeah, it's difficult to see the underlining
I-
there on
I
that word,
apologize for that.
other replacement value. The repair costs exceed 30% of the replacement value of the structure, which again is just clarifying that particular section.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Questions, discussion? Mrs. Hiller?
Move to amend.
It's been moved by Ms. Hiller and seconded by Ms. Everhart to approve this, to make this amendment, to approve this amendment. All those in favor, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no. I vote yes.
We have 8 yes and 1 Mr. Manspeaker voting no.
Okay, 8 having voted yes, the amendment is approved. Mr. Sublet?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The last one, it's a little longer, but it's on page 33.
Page 33,
Starts on line 744.
744, down at the bottom.
Yes. And goes into the next page to line 749.
Now, and is that an addition?
Yes.
Okay. An exception, there are several, this is a list of exceptions, but we've added one stating that when the outdoor temperature is below the winter outdoor design temperature for the locality, maintenance of the minimum room temperature shall not be required, provided that the heating system is operating at its full design capacity. The winter outdoor design temperature for the locality shall be as indicated in Appendix D of the International Plumbing Code. I
Yes,
think
Mr.
there should be a little background
Yes,
on this.
I could give a little background on this. This language was originally, we had originally stricken that language. This is directly from the IPMC. This is IPMC language. And we'd had several discussions about this. The winters in Kansas can be interesting. And sometimes certain heating units can't keep up when it's, 30 below and 20, a wind chill of 20 below. So what we're concerned about is that the heating units are operating at capacity and operating correctly. So that's why we put in that section, and it references the International Plumbing Code, which we have adopted in the city. So what we gain with that is if the room is 64 degrees and it's 30 degrees below zero, we're still in compliance. So that was an exception that we wanted to put back in there, and I would just offer that to the council.
Okay, council members, if you have questions about that or comments, Mr. Campos?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have a question for legal. What would be the litmus test for this? How would we prove that such equipment was operating at its capacity?
We're going to be doing, as we've mentioned earlier, we're going to be doing training and certification with our code officers. We would also be working with different agencies within the city to make a determination of whether it's operating at capacity.
So with that response, if I have a follow-up question, would we require for our code officers to obtain city permits to function as heating and cooling officials?
I don't know if there is a permit to operate as a heating and cooling official, they would be trained and certified in enforcing the code, and this is part of the code, so they would be trained on this issue.
Seems kind of stretching there, Counselor. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I can address that. I mean, this entire code is subject to training and certification. That is what we talked about on 3 different occasions, is we are going to have experts come down to train our code officials. We are going to have experts come down to train our prosecutors. We're going to have experts come down to train our judges. Everything that's part of the IPMC, and this is language directly from the IPMC, they will be training on, and there will be certification on.
All right. Mr. Campos.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that, Mr. Sublette. Yeah, I do recall. And one issue was that they'll have 2 opportunities to take this test in order to be certified to implement this code, but you never address what if they fail both times?
Now, I believe I have addressed that in previous work sessions, that if they do the training, they're not certified, they're not going to be qualified to be code officials within our city, and I did address that at, I believe, the 2nd work session in February.
Okay.
Forgive me, I didn't recall that, but I appreciate that answer. Thank you, Your Honor.
Are there other questions or comments? What is your pleasure, Mrs. Hiller?
Move to amend.
Ms. Hiller moved to amend. Ms. Delisle seconds. Discussion. All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
9 yes.
9 having voted yes, the amendment is approved. So we have the document ordinance, it's 5A, and have those amendments to it. I'd like to proceed now with the public comment. I'm sorry, Mr. Manspeaker.
I'm already on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just looking at page 35, line 773, section 605.2, receptacles is deleted is its entirety in the following provision. Should that be in its entirety?
Okay, you want to state those numbers again?
Sorry, page 35,
All right.
line 773, section 605.2. Should it be in instead of is?
Yes, Councilman Manspeaker, you are correct.
Does that create a legal quandary for us if we don't fix it?
Yes, I think we should amend it to say in its entirety.
Okay, I would like to move to amend to add, to strike the word is and add the word in.
Second.
Is deleted in its entirety. Mr. Manspeaker moves and Mr. Campos seconds. Discussion? All those in favor vote yes. Opposed vote no. I vote yes.
We have 9 yes.
9 yes. Shows that it's been read. Mr. Harmon?
Thank you, Your Honor. This question is for the city attorney. In our packet, we had a agenda item 5A, this issue. And then I had before me 5A, which contains amendments. So what we've been working on have been the amendments that were in this document that was given to us tonight and not what was in the packet.
The amendments, what you have in the packet was the copy without the amendments. And I provided this as just the language for proposed amendments to the document that's in the package.
Okay, so the 3 amendments that you recommended, plus the amendment that Councilman Manspeaker made, were to what was handed out previously, what was handed out after the packet went out. I just wanna make sure.
Yes, that is
You
correct.
just want to make sure we're amending the right
Yeah,
document.
I just wanna make, so,
Yeah,
okay.
the 5A has the 3 amendments that were
Right.
proposed earlier already in it.
Right, and then we added the one by Councilman
right.
Manspeaker, so this is the one we're, okay. I just wanna make sure we're,
Yeah, it's a good
Yeah.
point, so that, and that way we are, if this should pass, we are adopting this particular one,
Okay.
which is 5A.
thank you, I appreciate that clarification. Thank you.
Other
Councilman.
questions, comments, Mrs. Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Chad, I had some calls from some constituents today, and they wanted to know, if this passes tonight, when will this go into effect?
Going to effect July 1st, I believe is the date that we're using. that way, that'll give us time to do training and certification for our code officials.
July 1st of this year?
Yes,
that
Deputy
correct?
Mayor, yes.
Okay. And the reason why I ask that is because, some of my constituents want to delay this. So, let's see, this is April, that I give them a few months. They want to delay this so they can get a better understanding of what they need to do to clean up their properties. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I'm sure we'll hear from some of those.
Right.
Some of them are signed up to speak, so I just want to make that clear.
Okay, good, thank you. We will proceed then, if no other questions right now, with the public comment. We have 13 who have signed up, and these are recognized in the order in which the signing up took place. And I'll usually say 2 at a time. We would like to have the second person, particularly here in the back part, move towards the front so we can move easily through the entire group. First is Mariana Quilty. And if you haven't spoken before, you know that you have 4-minute limit, and a light comes on at the end of 3 minutes.
And I've got written copies too, so I'll just probably won't go through all of it, but just hit the high points here.
Right, thank you. And if you would, and again,
Should have one for everybody.
and if you would state your name.
Yes, I want to thank you, Mayor and City Council, for giving us the opportunity to speak tonight. I'm here on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Topeka, Shawnee County, and I'm the president of the league, Mariana Quilty. I am here to ask you to support and adopt the International Property Maintenance Code. We have had a position on housing and code enforcement since 1964, and we have followed this issue. Is this
Now,
gonna-
I don't need, you don't need to stand quite that close.
Okay, because I can't hear myself, and I did earlier, so I guess,
think-
can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay.
the audience, if they can
Okay,
hear,
we have
yes.
followed this issue since 1964, all the way to a current study on code enforcement and practices in the city. And we commend the Citizens Advisory Council, neighborhood associations, Neighborhood Code and Compliance Committee, and the Internal Review Committee for their hard work to review and recommend changes to the existing housing and enforcement codes. But in spite of the existing code reviews, it remains the #1 issue of concern for citizens, as evidenced by the citizen summits last summer. Neighborhood blight is damaging to our cities in many ways. People who live in these areas, it's not appealing, and it's not appealing to potential buyers with neighborhoods blight. Unmaintained property is also a principal reason for declining property values in the city, and declining property values are a source of losses in property taxes that are used to support local government services and our schools. Our league study of this issue cites the literature and local experience, which correlates unpaid, uncollected property taxes, declining property taxes, and maintenance code enforcement. That we're aware that cities like Topeka, they're struggling to provide funding for essential services in the wake of state and federal decline in federal monies. Maybe enforcing building codes in building maintenance codes in a different way than currently we have may be a way to generate income for the city. Topeka's current enforcement code is vague. It is subject to interpretation, and so it's difficult sometimes to identify and prosecute violators. The International Property Maintenance Code is written in clear, concise language that is known to be enforceable and defensible in court. 36 states, including Kansas, plus 16 cities in Kansas have adopted the IPMC. I didn't put this in my written testimony, but the International Property Maintenance Code is written by experts in code enforcement and building. So it's got a lot to recommend in that area, and it's also has a built-in process for review and improvement. It's reviewed and changes are recommended every 3 years. We support the IPMC because it promotes the health, safety, and well-being of citizens and protects neighborhoods against deteriorating influences by setting minimum standards for occupancy and requirements for maintaining those said buildings. And we are pleased that the City Council is making moves to help citizens who can't maybe afford to come up to code with those issues. So again, I am asking the City Council and Mayor to support this by adopting it, the IPMC as amended tonight. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Ms. Welty. The next speaker is Ray Snook, to be followed by Mark Galbraith. Is Mr. Snook here? Not seeing him. We will go on to Mark Galbraith, to be followed by Frank Aguilar.
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening, and thank you for this opportunity. My name is Mark Galbraith. I live at 1230 College. I'm a long-term member of the Elmhurst Neighborhood Association, and for the last 5 or 6 months, I've been serving as a member and chair of the Code Compliance Committee. That's a committee of the Topeka Neighborhood Task Force, and the task force really kind of grew out of a neighborhood summit that was held last summer, and we want to thank again the mayor and the city manager for taking leadership and making that summit happen. We think it was a very good thing for many reasons, but maybe primarily because the summit was designed to sort of ferret out those issues that Topeka neighborhoods and Topeka citizens were most concerned about regarding their city. And there were, of course, a number of issues that surfaced. But the top issue, the priority issue, as has been mentioned previously, was code compliance, our property maintenance and code enforcement. And I think that signals a great deal of frustration with that process. And I know you've likely heard that before. Anyway, that's kind of going a long way to establish our bona fides and why we're here, but I thought you ought to know. So the Code Compliance Committee was appointed by the Neighborhood Task Force, and we were charged with making recommendations for a more effective code compliance or property maintenance and code enforcement. We, as a committee, are still in the process of doing that, still formulating our recommendations. But one recommendation we're certain of and have no hesitation about making is for the need for change. We believe it's time for our city to sort of recognize that in spite of all the hard work and very good intention that went into our current ordinance regarding property maintenance and code enforcement, it just isn't serving us well, not as well as we wanted it to. We've read this week that the language in that code is vague and disjointed, and that makes it difficult to actually apply. It makes it difficult to defend in court. It simply makes it difficult to enforce. It's time for a change. And the change we think we need is to adopt the IPMC. There's so much positive about the IPMC. It's a can I go on?
Yes,
Okay.
you have one more minute.
All right. Oh, there's so much to recommend the code. It has language that's clear and unambiguous. It's been adopted, as has been said before, by 36 states and many cities, including cities in Kansas. It's been tried and tested over and over again. It does stand up in court. It is enforceable. It does work. So that's our recommendation to you. Please vote yes on this ordinance tonight. Please vote to adopt the whole ordinance. We think it works best as a whole, and so we encourage you to do that. I'd like to make just one other quick point, and that is to note that we didn't come to this recommendation lightly or quickly. Our committee spent considerable time talking about this, talking with city legal staff, a great deal of discussion with them. They've been very helpful. We've also made inquiries, kind of a mini survey to a number of cities in Kansas that have already adopted the IPMC. And
Okay. You'll have to
Motion to
finish.
extend.
Thank you.
It's been moved and second to extend your time. How much time do you need?
A minute ought to do it, I think.
1 minute.
Yep.
All those in favor of extending the time 1 minute, vote yes. Those opposed, vote no.
Mr. Campos? We have 8 yes.
8 having voted yes, you may continue for 1 minute.
Thank you very much. My point is that we have spent quite a bit of time trying to educate ourselves about the INPC and whether or not it would do what we want it to do, whether or not it'll bring us the change we need, and we're convinced that it will. We feel good about recommending it to you, and so that's what we do. I wonder if I could just turn to members of our committee that are here and just ask them to stand just briefly, along with some neighbors that have also joined us, and along with the league, if they'd stand with us in support of the IPNC.
These are the members of the committee.
Yes, the members of the Code Compliance Committee.
Code
Yes.
compliance, would the members of the code compliance, if you would like, you may stand.
And our neighbors who have joined us too in support of this, is that okay?
Certainly.
And the League of Women Voters who have joined us as well? Good.
right.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Happy to stand for questions.
Mayor?
Mr. Manspeaker?
I'm on here. Okay. Mark, I'm sitting here looking at an email that's dated 4/21/13 from you to me that in the subject line says Housing and Nuisance Code Problem List. And I remember this exchange because I think at some point I may have said to you, just bear with me, these problems have, as you know, lasted for a long, long time, and they may not be fixed very quickly. But here we are a year later, and I feel like a lot of good work has been done, and I appreciate the time that you've spent, and I know you, for many years prior to that email, you have worked on this issue, and I know many in the room have as well. So I just want to give the congratulations to you all on bringing us a product that I think is valuable and will bring a return to our community in terms of protecting our property values. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Frank Aguilar, to be followed by Deborah Edwards. Frank.
Well, council members, Mayor Walgash, City Manager, I'm Frank Aguilar. I'm president of the Oakland NIA, and I am in favor of passing the International Property Maintenance Code, the way it has been amended. I was going to go over a lot of the stuff that people have already said, so I'm not going to do that, and I won't bore you with that. But the main thing, as you know, if anybody's been in the Oakland area, or also I'm part of the Oakland area, which is also part of District 3 and District 2, so I really have 2 council members here that represents us. We have quite a few homes that are in need of repair, and it's been hard to enforce the code enforcement with the present way it is now. It takes too long, time-consuming. It took me probably an hour, 2 hours to read the amendments and the IPMC. And it's very simple, and it's very easy to enforce. It tells how many days you have, how much time you have for a code to go through before, you gotta excuse me because my asthma's been bothering me. And also it has monetary fines, which most of our homes that we're having problems with are rentals. And most of the people that are against this area will be the Shawnee County Landlord Association. And I could understand that because the landlords are the ones we want to get in step and to repair these rental homes to make them better for the occupants, which now some of the living environments are pretty bad. We want the neighborhood to be more livable, and we want it to be proud of the neighborhood. And being proud of the neighborhood makes other people take care of their homes when they see the homes around them being repaired. And I know there are going to be some low-income people and elderly people that cannot afford to repair their homes. But we have a lot of programs, and we have a lot of organizations that would help these people to repair their homes. And I'm one of the people that stands up and gets help for people when they need the help. We have church organizations, and we have other organizations, fraternal organizations, that are willing to volunteer their time to help people. And I'm sure once I have a cause I can get donations for some of our corporations that we have in the city to also help these people repair their homes. So I recommend that you guys accept this as amended, and this would also help our city, give us help throughout the city so that people would be proud to come and live in Topeka. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Next is Deborah Edwards, to be followed by John Moyer.
My name is Deborah Edwards. I'm a homeowner and a landlord of property in the downtown Topeka residential area. And I've read the IPMC twice, all 8 chapters, and there is a lot of really good stuff in there. However, I take exception to 104.3, the right of entry. I don't know if you've all read that or not, but it can be pretty scary. The last line especially, I would also remind you that Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, was a trained code compliance officer who used his credentials as a ruse to get into people's homes and target his next victim. So when you talk about code compliance officers being granted entry into people's homes, I think that could be very scary. The last line of 104.3 is, if entry is refused, code officials shall have recourse to the remedies provided by law to secure entry. That is ambiguous, in my opinion. It does not state how that is to happen. Can you answer that for me, Mr. Sokol?
I said, when in public comment, I should say to everyone, your comments, this is an opportunity for you to speak to the council.
Okay.
And so you speak to the council rather than to an individual.
So I can't, because I have questions about it, because I believe that it is not clear. It is very ambiguous. The rest of the code is written in very clear and concise language. However, section 104.3 is not clear. And that needs further study and revision, in my opinion. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we will have someone speak to that. All right, Mr. Manspeaker?
Could I have the city attorney speak to that now?
Well, okay, if you choose to, I thought we might go through and have a whole series of questions, but if it would be easier to handle, all right. Would you want to speak to 104.3?
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Councilman Manspeaker. 104.3 does say that the code official, if they are denied entry to do an inspection as remedies under the law, those remedies would be things like administrative search warrants. If they had probable cause to believe that they needed entry, it would be bound by the judicial process. That's typical language, just as you have in other criminal statutes, that the police department have whatever options are available under the law. That would have to be approved by an administrative warrant, would have to be approved by a judge. It's not something they can just go out and get themselves. So I think it's pretty specific language containing containing entry onto the property by whatever remedies are available to them by law. And I hope that was clear. But they would have to go through a process of getting a search warrant, getting it approved by the legal department, then presenting it to a court, and then the judge would have to sign off on that administrative search warrant to gain entry.
Thank you.
Other questions on that? Mr. Campos? I'm sorry.
Madam
Mr.
first.
Ortiz.
So thank you, Your Honor. With that logic, did we have a warrant for the Munson property?
The Munson property, I can speak to that if you'd like me to.
Sir, certainly.
Sure. The Munson property, there was entry onto that property because there was reasonable suspicion that a crime had occurred. That reasonable suspicion, and I don't know, you stop me when I go into too much detail, but the Munson property, there was evidence that reasonable suspicion of crime had occurred. A Kansas law enforcement officer with 25 years of training stated that he believed that there could have been entry into the property. He entered into that property to do a criminal investigation. That entire situation was recorded. Once he determined that he didn't believe a crime was currently occurring, contacted the Topeka Police Department, which dispatched a unit to make sure that no crime had occurred.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Coppola's.
Thank you, Your Honor. 2010 Supreme Court came back, if any type of police officer is brought forth to the home, therefore gets probable cause. I have an issue, and I do echo the madam's concern, and I see this as being very intrusive, and I don't know, I'd rather remand this, to be quite honest, but I'll refrain from further comments, Your Honor.
All right. Are there other questions or comments on this issue? Mrs. Ortiz?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know right now our code officers are they're not officers.
Right.
They're not certified by law or anything like that. They're just under the police department. And I know why we did that. We did that so we can work hand in hand with the police department when they go to some of these homes and stuff like that. I understand that. My concern is, will they ever be certified law officers? Will they continue to go to the law when they need to? I just don't, I guess I have a concern too. I don't want to see them get out of hand, because I've seen a code officer who still works for us that has went in somebody's backyard and has stowed lawnmowers out on a Friday and brought them back on a Monday. And he said he was just doing that to secure them. That's not why he did it. He did it because he bought them back because he knew it was illegal. And that's what I hear from my constituents is that, that they really understand what they're doing before they start going on property and taking things. So I just want to know how will that be handled?
I see. Do you want to comment on that, Mr. Sublette?
I can comment on that by, excuse me, our code officers are going to be trained, they're going to be certified. Part of the training is that the legal department will provide annual training on Fourth Amendment and due process issues. They're not certified law enforcement officers. I don't believe there is any plan for them to become certified law enforcement officers. That's why they go through the process of getting an administrative search warrant and not a criminal search warrant to enforce code issues.
But there are cities that they are, if I may, Mr. Mayor, there are cities that they are officers, and that's why I'm wondering if we're ever going to do that, because I just want to be careful before we get out there and.
Okay. All right.
Do we have any plans like that? Are we looking at that?
Mr. Mayor,
City
Councilmember
Manager.
Ortiz, no.
Okay. Mrs. Hiller?
I think Mrs. Edwards' question is a good one. Just so we frame it for her and for everybody, please correct me if I'm wrong, that her concern that we just talked about is the last line of that section. That section overall is the one that says that when a code officer appears at the door, they must provide credentials and show who they are and request, I'm going to paraphrase this, for one thing, I'm not looking at it, and request entry. And then it continues to say they would have to go through a legal process if they're denied entry, basically, which means that there's no difference than what we're doing today, where the uniformed officer goes, requests, and someone has the right to say no, and then they have to get that search warrant to proceed, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Campos?
Thank you, Your Honor. Quick question for those who are in code. Do we require a psychological analysis of them before they become code officers, like that of the TPD?
I don't know who can answer that. I don't know if we have someone here responsible for code. Would that be, okay, would be the Director of Human Resources, who would understand what the prerequisites are to become a code enforcement officer.
Currently, there is not a psychological evaluation pre-hire.
Okay, thank you. Are there other questions? I'm sorry, yeah, Mr. Manspeaker.
If I could just remind everybody, or maybe say it to the whole audience as well, the Code Enforcement Department's not on trial here. The change that we're seeking gives us a lot more structure and allows clarity so that we don't have to worry about the hypotheticals. And I think that's why this is important. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Seeing none, other? All right, Mr. Campos.
Thank you, Your Honor. I agree with Mr. Manspeaker, but I would have to also disagree that if we have to have full trust in the people who are implementing this policy. And I think that's been voiced right now. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if we don't have trust in our employees, we should probably let them go. Thank
All
you.
right. Let's move on with our next person for public comment. That's John Moyer, to be followed by Joe Ledbetter.
Mr. Mayor, council members, good evening. My name's John Moyer. I'm chair of the Topeka Neighborhood Task Force. Can you hear me okay? Okay. I'm here to speak in favor of the city adopting the standards listed in the International Property Maintenance Code. Now, I won't go into what Mark has already told you about as far as background, but one of the things that the committee that Mark chairs looked at was the current city ordinances and regarding code compliance, and to see if they needed changes or they needed maybe to be completely replaced. And based on their review, and this was, individual members, and based on their review of the current city ordinances and their review of the International Property Maintenance Code, and a briefing they received from City Attorney Chad Sublette and Assistant City Attorney Luther Gagne, they voted unanimously on December 4th, 2013, to recommend to the City Council, basically have an informal recommendation to City Council approve and adopt this code. And then on December 16th, 2013, the Neighborhood Task Force as a whole, which the Code Compliance Committee is a part of, they voted unanimously to make a formal recommendation to the City Council to do the same thing, and I think I sent you some letters. Okay. And one reason I'm in favor of this is, as has been mentioned before, code clears up several ambiguities and vague references. And also, we've heard about training and certification. That's part of the code. There has to be training and certification for the inspectors. I believe that this will increase their professionalism and their credibility whenever they have to testify in court. And I believe that fixing the code is not going to, or adopting this code will not fix all the problems. But I believe it's a foundation for the city to make significant improvement and progress on our code enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moyer. Our next speaker is Joe Ledbetter, to be followed by Aaron Edwards.